He pulled the trigger on the siren like he'd done 100 times before, but this time Officer Travis Monroe wasn't chasing a broken taillight. He was chasing a feeling. The black luxury sedan had done nothing wrong, not legally, but in Travis's eyes, it was going to slow in a nice part of town, too clean, too shiny, too expensive, and most of all, driven by a black man in a tailored navy blue suit who didn't look nervous enough. That's what really did it. The man behind the wheel looked calm, too calm. Travis had seen that look before in courtrooms, in council meetings, men who thought they were untouchable. Men who thought a badge like his couldn't still decide what happened to them on the street. So he flicked the lights and pulled him over. He adjusted his belt, rolled his shoulders back, and walked to the driver's side with the swagger of someone who knew he held all the power. The man rolled down the window and met his eyes directly. No fear, no confusion, just a quiet, unshakable awareness. "Good evening, officer," he said, voice low and steady. "May I ask why I'm being pulled over?" Travis didn't like the way he asked, polite but assertive. He didn't like the way his watch glinted under the street lamp, or the fact that he hadn't fumbled for paperwork or over-explained himself like most people would. "License and registration," Travis snapped. "Step out of the vehicle." The man hesitated just long enough to make Travis angrier. Then he unbuckled his seatbelt slowly, placed both hands where Travis could see them, and stepped out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, immaculately dressed. No sign of threat, no sign of aggression, and yet, something about him lit a fire in Travis. It wasn't what he did. It was what he didn't do. He didn't shrink, didn't apologize, didn't beg, and in Travis's mind, that was enough. He grabbed the man's wrist roughly and shoved him against the hood. "Turn around," he barked. "Hands behind your back." The man didn't resist. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. Travis tightened the cuffs until they bit into skin. "You don't get to talk to me about mistakes," he hissed. Cars slowed on the street. Someone honked. Another driver pulled out a phone and started filming. Travis didn't care. He was the law. He could smell the power in the air, the adrenaline. He patted the man down, finding nothing. No drugs, no weapon, not even a wallet. Just calm breathing, measured and slow. The man looked at him, eyes sharp. Voice cool. "You have no idea, do you?" 6 words. That was all he said, but it landed like a punch. Travis yanked him toward the squad car and forced him into the back seat. As he drove, Travis glanced at the mirror. The man sat perfectly still, head turned slightly, watching the passing lights like he'd seen it all before. There was no panic. No shouting, just a silence that screamed. At the station, Travis marched him through the entrance without booking him properly, ignoring protocol. He didn't even log the arrest, just tossed the man into a holding cell and slammed the bars. "Shut. You'll sit there until I figure out what to charge you with," he muttered. The man didn't respond. He simply sat down on the bench and folded his hands like he was waiting for an appointment. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Travis leaned back in his chair, feet up, sipping cheap coffee that tasted like metal. That's when the front door burst open and Chief Dorsey stormed in, eyes wild, tie loosened, face pale. "Where is he?" he demanded. "Who?" Travis replied, standing slowly. "The man you brought in tonight. Where the hell is he?" "Holding," Travis said, confused. "Why?" The chief didn't answer. He ran down the hallway, scanned the clipboard, then stared into the cell window like he was seeing a ghost. Travis caught up. "Chief, what's going on?" Chief Dorsey turned slowly. "That man you arrested. His name is Elijah Grant, Special Agent, FBI, Internal Affairs Division." The words didn't register at first. Then Travis's heart dropped like a stone. "No," he muttered. "He didn't identify himself. He didn't need to," the chief snapped. "He's been embedded in this area for weeks, undercover, investigating allegations of racial profiling in this precinct." The hallway spun. Travis looked through the window again. Elijah was still seated, calm, as if this was all part of his plan. Because it was. He recorded everything, the chief added grimly. He was wearing a mic. He's got footage, audio, timestamps, witnesses, and now we've got the Dodge breathing down our necks. Travis backed away, face flushed. "It's not what it looks like, it's exactly what it looks like." the chief snapped, and you handed it to him on a silver platter. In the cell, Elijah stood up and approached the bars. His voice cut through the silence like a scalpel. "We're not here to destroy you, Officer Monroe," he said. "We're here to expose a system. And tonight, you volunteered." Travis didn't respond. He couldn't. The weight of his own actions settled on him like concrete. What started as just another power trip on a quiet night had become something else entirely, and the storm was only beginning. He stood outside the cell like a man staring into the mouth of a loaded gun, his badge suddenly feeling more like a noose than a shield. Officer Travis Monroe couldn't bring himself to open the door. On the other side of those steel bars sat the same black man he'd shoved, cuffed, and humiliated less than an hour ago, only now he wasn't just some stranger behind the wheel of a fancy car. He was Elijah Grant, a special agent with the FBI's Internal Affairs Division, and Travis had handed him everything he needed. The moment the chief said his name, the temperature in the entire building dropped 10 degrees. Travis had always thought he was untouchable. His word, his report, his authority, they always won. Even when he bent the rules, blurred the lines. No one asked questions, but tonight the rules had flipped, and Elijah was still watching him calmly, like a man waiting for the trap he set to spring shut. Travis finally unlocked the door. It creaked open slowly. Elijah didn't stand. He just looked up with that same quiet confidence. "Ready to talk now?" he asked, not angry, not smug, just deliberate, controlled. Travis tried to play it cool. "You could have said who you were." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "I did, with every word. You just weren't listening." Travis felt his throat tighten. The chief stepped in beside him, face pale and tight. "Agent Grant, I want to formally." "Apologize on behalf of don't," Elijah interrupted, standing now. He was taller than Travis remembered. Straighter. "This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't one bad stop. This is the reason I'm here." He pulled out a phone, played the audio. Travis heard his own voice coming back to him like poison. Barking orders, threatening, mocking. It was all there, and worse so was the silence. The kind that made every word hang heavier, the kind that exposed more than just words. It revealed character, arrogance, pattern. This precinct is under federal review, Elijah continued. And I've spent the last 6 weeks gathering more than just stories. I have footage, witnesses, patterns of behavior, internal memos. You're not the only one, Officer Monroe, but tonight you made yourself the centerpiece. Travis opened his mouth but had no words. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. He was supposed to be the one writing the report, filing the charges, controlling the story. Elijah walked past him, stepping out of the cell like a man stepping back into his rightful place. "You didn't just arrest an agent," he said quietly. "You exposed a system, and I intend to bring it into the light." As he passed by, he paused. "Do you know how many complaints your department has received in the last 5 years? Travis swallowed. Elijah didn't wait for an answer. 58. Most went unsubstantiated, no bodycam footage. No follow-up, no disciplinary action. He turned slowly, until now. The chief rubbed his forehead, clearly spiraling. "We can fix this. We can cooperate." Elijah's gaze didn't soften. "You'll have to. I'm not here to destroy this department. I'm here to rebuild what your silence let rot." Word traveled fast. Within hours, agents from the Bureau arrived. Files were copied. Computers were seized. Officers whispered behind closed doors. Some cursed. Others looked relieved. For years, they'd watched Travis bend the rules, stopping drivers without cause, detaining teens on the thinnest suspicion, using just enough force to stay out of trouble, just enough plausible deniability to avoid internal review. But tonight, that shield cracked. Travis sat at his desk, numb, staring at nothing. His radio was silent. No calls came in. His authority evaporated. When he looked up, he saw Officer Martinez, the rookie, watching him from across the room. There was something in his eyes Travis hadn't seen before, disgust, or maybe clarity. Elijah walked into the conference room, this time flanked by 2 federal agents. A large screen lit up with footage, dashcam, cell phone clips, testimonies. It wasn't just about Travis anymore. It was bigger. It was about a culture, a code, and tonight the silence had been broken. Hours passed. Reporters waited outside. Phones rang off the hook. The public had questions, and for the first time, Travis had no answers. No one was coming to save him. Not the chief, not the union, not the old guard who once protected him. Elijah stood at the center of it all. Not vengeful, not triumphant, just steady, unshakable, like a man doing what needed to be done. Travis knew what was coming: an internal hearing, a suspension, a trial, maybe more. But what haunted him most wasn't the fallout. It was the feeling he'd had when Elijah said those 6 words during the arrest. "You have no idea, do you?" He had thought it was arrogance. Now he knew it was warning, a quiet signal, a last chance, and he had missed it, because men like him weren't trained to listen only to control. And tonight, control had slipped through his fingers like dust. For the first time in his career, Travis felt what it was like to sit on the other side of the bars, not physically, but in the eyes of his peers, the eyes of the world, and worst of all, the eyes of the man he had tried to break. Elijah Grant was no longer just a name, he was the reckoning. The news spread like fire in a drought-stricken forest, uncontrollable, fast, and impossible to ignore. Within 48 hours of Elijah Grant's wrongful arrest, the FBI's Office of Internal Affairs launched a full-scale inquiry into the precinct. What started as one officer's abuse of power had cracked open something much darker, much deeper, a rot that had festered in silence for years. Files were pulled from archives, bodycam footage recovered from tampered systems, and digital. Forensics began combing through emails, reports, and internal communications. Elijah didn't sit back, he led the investigation from the inside. With access to data, testimony, and whistleblower protection, he began compiling a timeline of misconduct. Travis Monroe was the match, but the gasoline had been leaking for years. Officers started whispering, some out of fear, others out of guilt. One by one, the cracks appeared. A patrol sergeant quietly admitted to seeing Travis falsify a report last year. A clerk confessed that she'd been told to lose a civilian. Complaint file involving a black teenager who was held without charge for 12 hours. Elijah's team didn't just find racism, they found a pattern, a culture, a brotherhood of silence wrapped in a uniform of authority. Travis, meanwhile, doubled down. He called it a setup, said Elijah had provoked him, accused the Bureau of targeting him because he was outspoken. They don't want cops who do real work, he told a right-wing podcast. They want us neutered. But his words didn't match the evidence, and the world had already seen the video, that footage. Taken from a civilian phone. Uploaded anonymously to Reddit and shared to TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube within hours showed everything. Travis's aggressive tone, the unnecessary handcuffs, the look on Elijah's face when he calmly warned, "You have no idea, do you?" The internet erupted. The clip was viewed 12 million times in 3 days. The title alone was gasoline. FBI agent arrested by racist cop. Watch the look on his face. Comment sections exploded with outrage. Hashtags trended overnight. Hashtag justice for Elijah. Hashtag clean the blue. Hashtag FBI versus racism. News outlets picked it up. CNN aired the footage alongside commentary from civil rights attorneys. Fox News tried to spin the narrative, but even their hosts stumbled over the facts. Travis's name became synonymous with everything wrong with modern policing. His photo, once posed with a medal for bravery, was now pasted across headlines, like a wanted poster. But it wasn't just the media that responded. Protests began forming outside the precinct, peaceful at first. Citizens of every background came with signs, candles, chants. Some were victims, some were allies, some were simply tired. Mothers held pictures of sons wrongfully detained. College students printed out transcripts of complaints that were never answered. And right at the front, the mother of Malik Rivers, the 17-year-old boy who had once been arrested under eerily similar circumstances and never recovered. She spoke into a megaphone, tears in her voice, rage in her chest. "They let my son rot in a cell for something he didn't do. He died thinking he didn't matter, but he did, and so do the rest of us." Her words went viral, again and again. Each time, more people joined. Meanwhile, Elijah kept working. He met with the Dodge, sat through interviews, cross-referenced complaints, and found patterns that couldn't be ignored. The same officers, the same language, the same neighborhood, and nearly every time the victims were black or brown. The statistics weren't just bad, they were damning. Travis, backed into a corner, made his final move. He hired a high-profile defense attorney, launched a lawsuit against the FBI claiming harassment and defamation, and gave a live interview to a national TV host where he declared, "This is a witch hunt. They're destroying my life over one bad stop." But even his lawyer looked unconvinced, because something else had surfaced, something no one expected. A bodycam file recovered from an encrypted folder, date stamped 18 months prior. The footage showed Travis stopping a car for suspicious behavior. The driver? A local black schoolteacher named Andre Bell. No crime, no traffic violation. Travis made him exit the car, pushed him to the ground, and accused him of drug possession without a single piece of evidence. The footage had been erased from the system, or so Travis thought. Elijah played the clip during a closed-door internal hearing. The room was silent when it ended. Even the chief, who had once defended Travis, looked away. "You understand," Elijah said softly. "This isn't about one arrest. It's about a pattern of abuse wrapped in the confidence that no one would ever pull the curtain back." Travis stared at the table, jaw clenched, eyes empty. He didn't have a defense anymore. Just a legacy, and it was collapsing like wet cardboard. The FBI report would go public in a matter of days. Names would be named, actions would be exposed, policies would be rewritten, and Travis Monroe, once the loudest voice in the room, had become a ghost of his own making. The investigation wasn't just about justice. It was about transformation. And now that the world had seen behind the badge, nothing would ever be the same. The deeper they dug, the darker it got. Elijah Grant and his internal affairs team weren't just looking at Officer Travis Monroe anymore. They were looking at a system that had protected men like him for years, and it was in that darkness that they uncovered a name that had almost been erased from the precinct's records: Malik Rivers. 17 years old, arrested 2 years ago during a routine stop in the same neighborhood where Elijah had been pulled over. Travis claimed Malik had looked suspicious, that his hoodie was bulky and his answers shifty. There was no contraband, no crime, no probable cause, just a teenager walking home from a tutoring session who didn't say yes sir fast enough. He was held overnight, no call to his parents, no official charges, just humiliation, psychological trauma, and silence. Malik had been released the next day, confused and shaken, but something in him broke. His mother, Dana Rivers, said he stopped smiling after that, stopped sleeping, started asking why people like him had to walk straighter, speak softer, move slower just to avoid being seen as dangerous. He lasted 6 more months. One morning, she found him in his room, lifeless. A note on the desk read, "I'm tired of feeling like a threat." Dana had tried to speak out, filed a complaint, reached out to the local news, held a vigil, but nothing happened. The report was labeled unsubstantiated. Bodycam footage from that night was missing. Travis was cleared. No one lost their job. No one even apologized, but now Elijah had the full picture. His investigation pulled internal memos that showed the arrest. He found the deleted footage in a backup system that someone forgot to wipe, and what he saw broke him. Malik's face, his voice trembling. "What did I do wrong?" he had asked. Travis didn't answer in the video. He just smirked. Elijah replayed that clip 5 times in silence. Then he called Dana Rivers. When she walked into the bureau conference room, the agents stood, not because she asked them to, but because they understood who she was, what she had survived. She wore a plain black dress, her son's name stitched into the sleeve in gold thread. She didn't need notes, didn't need to rehearse her pain. Spoke fluently. "This is the man who ruined my son's life," she said, holding up a photo of Malik, not the one from the arrest, but one where he was smiling, holding a chess trophy, a future in his eyes, "and I want to know why you let him keep his badge." Her voice didn't tremble, but the room did. The chief of police sat beside Elijah, pale and expressionless. He'd heard stories, sure, every department had them. But now the stories had faces, names, grief. Dana turned to Elijah. "When I saw the video of your arrest, I felt sick, because I thought maybe if someone like you had been here back then, my son would still be alive, Elijah swallowed. Hard, I can't bring him back, he said, but I can make sure no more boys disappear into silence. She nodded once and placed Malik's photo on the table like it was evidence. From that moment on, the investigation shifted gears. It was no longer about bad policing, it was about stolen lives. And Malik became the symbol. His story was told on national television. His photo appeared on murals downtown. His mother became a voice no one could ignore. Protesters carried signs that read, "I am Malik. Justice delayed is justice." Denied, his life mattered. As Elijah continued digging, more names surfaced, some that had been buried under red tape, others buried in memory. A college student who'd been falsely arrested for resisting, a deaf man who was tased for not responding to verbal commands, a mother whose door was kicked in during a mistaken warrant. Most of these reports had one thing in common: Travis Monroe, and each time the paper trail led back to closed investigations, missing footage, or quietly dismissed complaints. But now there was no place left to hide. Travis was suspended indefinitely. His lawyer issued statements, called it a coordinated character assassination, but the public wasn't buying it. The facts were too loud, the faces too real, the silence too long. Dana Rivers stood on the courthouse steps 1 week later, flanked by Elijah and community leaders. Reporters gathered, cameras clicked. She held Malik's photo high and spoke to the world. He was more than a case, he was more than a headline, he was a boy who mattered. And now I want every mother to know we're not invisible anymore. Her words cracked something open. Donations poured into the Malik Rivers Foundation, created in his honor to provide legal aid for youth caught in unjust arrests. Schools hosted forums. City councils drafted reform policies. The world had shifted not with violence, but with truth. And at the center of it all, Elijah remained focused, not on fame, not on revenge, but on justice, as he watched Dana speak. He remembered his own childhood, the times his father had warned him, "Keep your hands visible, don't run, don't argue, come home alive." He had listened, and now he had the power to change what boys like Malik would never have the chance to fight. The darkness had been exposed, the history unearthed, and now, justice had a face. The courtroom buzzed with attention so thick it seemed to hum in the air, every seat filled, every breath held just a little too long, as if the city itself had stopped to watch justice balance on a knife's edge. Reporters stood shoulder to shoulder. At the back wall, cameras aimed like weapons, their red lights blinking as a warning the world was watching. Travis Monroe sat at the defense table, wearing a gray suit that didn't quite fit, his hair no longer slicked back but loose and unkempt, his eyes sunken and shadowed. The man who once strutted through hallways like he owned the law now looked like a relic out of place, out of time, and out of chances. His attorney whispered something, but Travis didn't respond. His gaze was fixed across the room, where Elijah Grant sat beside the prosecution, upright and composed, dressed in a dark blue suit, not for style but for armor. When the bailiff called his name, Elijah stood and approached the witness stand with a quiet intensity, each step deliberate, grounded, like a man who had carried weight heavier than anyone in that courtroom could imagine. The oath was short, but the silence that followed it was long, heavy with expectation. Elijah looked directly at the jury, not with emotionless authority, but with unshakable clarity. "On the night of March 7th, he began, voice calm and even, I was unlawfully stopped, forcibly detained, and humiliated by Officer Travis Monroe not because I committed a crime, but because of how I looked, because of who I am." The prosecutor nodded. "And what is your position, Mr. Grant?" "Special Agent, FBI, Internal Affairs Division, embedded in this city to investigate systemic misconduct in local law enforcement." Murmurs stirred in the gallery. Elijah continued. "What happened that night wasn't an isolated incident. It was a reflection of a culture, one where power is unchecked, where accountability is optional, and where the color of your skin can turn your existence into suspicion." The prosecutor asked if he had evidence. Elijah didn't respond. With words, he tapped a button. A screen descended, the courtroom lights dimmed, and the footage began to play. The video, once grainy cell phone footage on social media, was now shown in full clarity, synced with audio, bodycam overlays, timestamps. It showed Travis pulling Elijah over without cause. It showed the aggression, the cuffing, the disregard, every shove, every insult, every abuse of power. A gasp rose from the audience when Elijah's voice echoed through the speakers those 6 now iconic words. "You have no idea, do you?" But Elijah wasn't finished. The prosecutor introduced the next file, the recovered body cam from the Malik Rivers incident. This time, the gasp turned to outright shock. The footage was damning. Malik, young and visibly terrified, asking again and again, "What did I do?" And Travis, silent, smug, unmoved. Dana Rivers sat in the front row, clutching her son's photo in one hand, the other wrapped tightly around the edge of the bench. Her eyes never left the screen. The prosecutor turned to the jury. "This is not just misconduct, this is cruelty." Under color of law, then came the surprise witness officer Ramon Castillo. No one expected him to testify. He'd served alongside Travis for years, but today he stood tall in full uniform, his voice shaking only once. "We all knew," he said. "We saw the stops, the reports, the complaints. We were told not to interfere, to stay quiet, and we did. I did." He looked directly at Travis. "I was afraid of what would happen if I spoke. I'm more afraid now of what happens if I stay silent." The courtroom held its breath. Travis's attorney tried to counter-painted Elijah as a provocateur, Castillo as a traitor, and the entire investigation as a media circus, but the jury had seen the truth with their own eyes. They had heard it, felt it, and when they returned after only 4 hours of deliberation, their verdict rang through the chamber like a bell that couldn't be unrung. Guilty on all counts. Travis didn't speak, he didn't shout, he didn't cry, he just stared ahead, jaw clenched, as the judge stripped him of his badge, his pension, and eventually his freedom. 15 years, federal prison, no parole. The courtroom erupted not in cheers, but in a quiet, collective exhale. For the first time, it felt like something had shifted. After the verdict, Elijah stepped outside into the cold evening air. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. "Do you feel vindicated? Is this justice? What happens now?" Elijah looked into the lens of the nearest camera. His voice steady, his message clear. "This isn't justice, it's a start. Justice isn't one guilty verdict. It's a system that doesn't need agents like me to expose it. Justice is when Dana Rivers never has to bury her son. Justice is when boys like Malik walk home without fear. Justice is when a badge means protection, not power." Behind him, the courthouse stood tall, but it was the people around him who truly held it up. Mothers, teachers, students, fellow officers who had stayed silent too long. Change had come, not through riots or rage, but through truth, pressure, and proof. Travis Monroe was gone, but his downfall was not the end. It was a signal, a warning, a beginning, and Elijah. He didn't celebrate, he didn't smile. He simply walked down the courthouse steps into the crowd, shook Dana's hand, hugged the protesters who once marched for him, and disappeared into the movement he had helped ignite. Somewhere, far beyond the flashing lights and headlines, a new generation was watching, and this time they weren't afraid.